Hey, welcome back for another episode of Porn Brain Rewire with me, Dr. Trish Leigh. Today, we are going to reverse time a little bit. If you've been with me on this podcast for a while, we're going to reverse to the signs of a porn addiction. So, we're going to back it up and cover some of the basics, but it's always a good reminder because what I know about this thing is that the hijacker in your brain who might be trying to convince you don't have a quote unquote addiction or you do not have problematic porn use, as we call it in the industry, that hijacker is likely trying to trick you. So, remembering what the signs are can be really important for long term recovery because, as you know, this can be tricky to leave behind and keep behind you. So, revisiting it is a great idea, even if you've been with me for a while. And if you're new, it's important that you recognize, I don't love the word addiction, but it is pretty powerful when you realize that your brain has been controlling you instead of you controlling your brain. That's what I want you to take away from today's episode if these signs of porn addiction resonate with you. So there's 10 signs of porn addiction that we're going to cover. We're going to go down them. At the end of this podcast, I'm going to give you your brain hack strategy for the day. So stay with me, get a journal, get a nice pen, spend time thinking about this because we know that there's no such thing as a horizontal spiral. Porn use is, in fact, a downward spiral. So see what you think about these signs. And if you find that any of them apply to you, it might be time to put porn behind you forever. Okay, so digging right in. When people say, how do I know if I have a porn addiction? We could stop this list of 10 at number 1, because if this applies to you, we don't even need to talk about anything else, but we will. Okay, so the first sign, and I'm not going to say porn addiction anymore. I'm going to say the first sign you have a problem with porn is you can't stop. So this is what I say to people because they'll go, oh, Dr. Trish, you really think porn addiction is a real thing? Yes, I do. We know the World Health Organization has classified compulsive sexual behavior disorder in its newest version. That's the International Classification of Diseases. This is what the world recognizes as a leading document on what disease and disorders and challenges that people have and the classifications of them. Compulsive sexual behavior disorder, and the number one way that manifests is pornography use. So we know addiction's real, but when people say to me, you really think, porn addiction's a real thing? How do I know if I have a porn addiction? Most times I chuckle and I say, try to stop. Because the reality is, if you try to stop, it will be very difficult. And there are some people who only watch porn one time a week, quote unquote only, if you know what I mean, only watch porn one time a week or every other week. But when they try to stop, there is withdrawal. Their brain and their body and their mind will become highly uncomfortable. And this is because it's difficult to leave porn behind because your brain has developed a dopamine dependency. So we know that the reason you can't stop is because your brain is dependent on high levels of dopamine from the screen. So you want to know if you have a porn problem, try to stop and see what happens. When things get weird, call me or get into my 90-day program because it means you have a dopamine dependency on porn. Okay. So another reason that you can't stop or you may want more is that there is tolerance building and escalation. So this leads us to number 2. Not only can you not stop, but your brain wants more. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter, the molecule of motivation for more pleasure. Motivation for more pleasure. And that is what's going on in terms of tolerance building and escalation. So there's no such thing as a horizontal spiral. Basically, if you're watching porn, it's a slippery slope towards building tolerance to the level of dopamine that your brain is accustomed to. And at a certain point, there will be tolerance building, which means you will no longer get the same feeling, the same rush, the same numbed out, the same high, the same pleasurable experience from the same levels of dopamine. You will need more. And of course, the industry is acutely aware of this, and that's why they bait you into new scenes, new scenarios, new niches, new levels of intensity to keep you hooked. So when you jump up a level in intensity and you feel that rush in your brain, you have just increased and escalated the amount of dopamine you're giving your brain. So you've just increased the drug amount that's going into your brain, basically. You are escalating your behavior to escalate the amount of dopamine. So number one, you can't stop. Number two, you want more. Okay, which leads us to number three. Number three is that you lose time in porn and in your porn use. So what happens to so many people that I speak with, they'll say, I've been trying to stay away and then I don't know what happened. I found myself in a binge where I watched porn for 5 hours. I couldn't believe it. And Terry Crews actually has a saying, he was addicted to porn and it almost destroyed his marriage and his life. And then finally he moved through porn addiction recovery. And on the other side of it, there was a video he made that when sundown turns to sun up and you've lost that amount of time, you have a problem. So if you're investing your time, if you're investing your time, money, and energy basically into something, it is the relationship that you're in. So if you find you keep going back to porn throughout the day, if you find that you're in porn for long amounts of time, you are investing your time. And when you lose time, that basically means, your brain has been flooded with dopamine, and that's a binge, meaning you get the dopamine dripping, then you get the flood flowing, the deluge going, the dopamine drowning. But this leads you to the next things that I'm going to describe. So that's number three. You've lost time because that is what your brain needs to feel good. Now let's move to number four. Number four is you've lost interest in sex. Now, again, something people say to me all the time is these are mainly the haters that will say, you're anti-sex. I'm like, no, I'm not. I am trying to let people know how dangerous porn is for their brain. But what I want for people is for them to get into their lives and to be able to have healthy sex lives with a partner. Sex is supposed to be relational. Compulsive or addictive sex isn't. Hypersexuality is generally played out by one person using other people or using electronics or screen time or using themselves. So what that looks like is you go back into porn, you masturbate, you lust after other people, you're online on chat rooms or other things of that nature. You are on dating apps for hookups. You are calling escorts. All of those are hypersexual behaviors where one person is using another individual or another modality for high levels of dopamine for you, that one person. That's the hijacker trying to get as much dopamine as humanly possible. Because remember, pornography is at the root of those other behaviors. And we know porn is a super normal stimulus. It's going to give your brain a lot of dopamine. And that dopamine is going to necessitate that you get more. And that getting more is going to make it so that your behaviors escalate also. Okay, so which leads me back to number four. You've lost interest in relational sex with a partner. So we know that when porn use and compulsive hypersexuality is in the mix, sexual satisfaction decreases and performance issues increase. And we're going to cross that bridge in just a second, but right now let's stay with satisfaction. It goes back to there's a dopamine deficit in your life. So there's a dopamine deficit in the bedroom because all the dopamine's in the screen with yourself or with objectifying other people. So another sign is you've lost interest in sex. You might be unresponsive to romantic or relational sex gestures from your partner, and you might just not be that interested in sex, or you might have erectile dysfunction and performance issues that do stem out of porn use. This is number 4. Not interested in actual sex with your partner and not able to perform. And we're going to expand upon the not able to perform when we get a little bit lower into some higher numbers on this list. Okay, so number 1, you can't stop. Number 2, you need more. Number 3, you lose time or you're constantly going back. Number 4, you've lost interest in sex or you are not able to perform anymore. Leads us to number 5. Number 5 is you have become more demanding, especially when it comes to sex. So why does this happen? It happens because of something called the narcissistic bubble. The narcissistic bubble is a product of all that dopamine flowing in your brain. So when you drown out your brain in dopamine, it wants more. Remember, motivation back to more pleasure at any cost sometimes. So this narcissistic bubble can really make it so that your reality becomes distorted, and the narcissistic piece is that you become the center of attention and everything out there is seen as something for your pleasure. That's why lusting after other people, you might start becoming more demanding or start trying to take new higher level intense sexual acts from your partner in the bedroom. What do I mean by that? It means instead of it being relational sex, the acts that you've seen in the screen are things that you want done to you or you want to do in the bedroom. And if your partner doesn't want to do those things, many times you will have the brilliant idea, and yes, that's sarcasm, which I know is the lowest form of humor, but it's not against you, it's against the hijacker in your brain. The hijacker will give you the brilliant idea that you could get an escort to act those things out, because that's a person that is an object, not your relational partner that you actually care about, and it should be an intimate relationship. When it comes to this thing is deep and wide. Porn addiction is not a surface level issue. It is complex, and it has to do with intimacy issues. It has to do with dopamine. It has to do with pleasure seeking. It has to do with this narcissistic bubble that makes you more demanding in the bedroom and outside of the bedroom, because your brain sees the world as your oyster to take from. But when you leave porn behind, that shifts. So if you notice that this is the way you're relating in the world, or if people comment to you that you're more demanding these days, that should give you pause on what porn use is doing to your brain. Think dopamine drowning, think narcissistic bubble that's put you at the epicenter of the universe in terms of using other people for your pleasure. Okay, that's number 5. Number 6 is you've lost attraction to your partner. So we know sexual satisfaction goes down, and it's likely you no longer find your partner as attractive. Unfortunately, this is a byproduct of porn use. I also know from experience with a lot of men, it also may make you think you're attracted to men because that link of dopamine is happening to the performers in the screen, female and male. So it decreases your satisfaction with your actual partner, and it may make you think you're attracted to the same sex, or you become more attracted to the performers who your partner likely could never match the dopamine levels that that's providing your brain in the acts that you're consuming these people doing. Remember, you're a consumer when it comes to porn, not a person who's actually acting in that relationship like you are with your partner. So we know again from the science that attraction to your partner significantly decreases because of porn, and you may find you actually have attraction to other people or to the same sex. This, in fact, is a byproduct of porn, of problematic porn use. It has to do with the dopamine dependency. Okay, that is number 6. Number 7 is you are in physical or mental pain. So, this dopamine deficit that happens in your life also increases cortisol, and it changes the way that your brain uses electrical energy. So, it puts you in a hyper and hypo aroused mode simultaneously or swinging back and forth between them. I call it pendulum brain. I've started to call it strained brain because strained brain shows the strain on your nervous system to regulate itself. It is a brain dysfunction. We know it affects the frontal lobe and it desensitizes the reward center in the middle of your brain. And so, what happens is it can give you physical pain, it can give you physical symptoms. It absolutely can give you mental symptoms in terms of psychological and cognitive symptoms. So, another physical symptom that we're revisiting from a number up top, I think number 4 it was, is erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and delayed ejaculation. Primarily delayed ejaculation and erectile dysfunction are the more prominent byproducts of a problematic porn use habit. The reason being is that desensitization in your brain makes it so that when you're with your partner, you have to be 15 out of 10 stimulated to be able to achieve an erection and to be able to get to the point of orgasm. Porn gives you level 15 stimulation in the brain. Your partner on a good day is probably a 7, 8, or 9 in terms of stimulation. So that beautiful human being could never compare to the amount of dopamine you're getting out of the screen, which means erectile dysfunction and delayed ejaculation, they fall out of that problematic porn use. At the same time, you might actually have physical pain and you might feel it in many different ways. But if you're struggling physically, it might be because not only does pain increase because the brain dysfunction, but if you're spending hours in front of your computer or hours masturbating, you will be in physical pain because of that. My husband's a chiropractor, and even before I focused on porn, he would tell me stories of people's necks and backs being jacked up and arthritis because of spending hours and hours and hours in front of the computer or masturbating. It takes a physical toll. Now, moving to the mental toll, we know that change in brain performance pattern that can fall out as this dysregulated, dysfunctional brain pattern causes anxiety, depression, ADHD, brain fog, difficulty with memory and concentration. So, mental health issues in terms of psychological problems are a byproduct of porn use, as is the inability to focus and to feel motivated and to be able to use executive function skills, to be able to plan and implement a project and be able to get little dopamine hits along the way and be able to get a larger dopamine, which could never compare to porn at the end of a big project. Your brain's not able to do it anymore because it's been hitting the easy button to get dopamine. So that dopamine deficit in your life makes it so you can't work towards that dopamine anymore. That is a byproduct of porn use. And number 7 is you have physical pain, you have physical issues, and mental health issues such as psychological or cognitive. Your ability to think might be impaired. Okay, number 8, money. It might be costing you money. So again, remember, your time, energy, and money are being put towards this thing that is taking from you and it's creating these issues. And that could make it so that, you're falling on financial hard times. I work with a lot of people who are in a compulsive mode of spending this money, not only in porn sites, but in those other sites for sexual acting out, which can be very, very expensive. So if you're spending all this money to get these dopamine hits, porn is taking from you, and this is a problem. Okay. Number 9, you're distracted. So what happens is this narcissistic bubble and this pull back into the screen is what I call it. The supernormal stimulus of porn is always pulling you back. And coupled with the deficit of dopamine that it's created in your life, you are not able to engage in your life anymore. The pull back into the screen is there. it feels like distraction, and it feels like an inability to approach and engage your life and to stay connected in your life. If you feel that way, that is real. So the stress of your life pushes you into the screen, but that screen's constantly pulling you through urges and cravings. And we know this. There's a scientific study by Valerie Voon and her team that shows that there's higher reward sensitivity for compulsive porn users, which means your brain lights up more when you consume porn than other people who do not use pornography. And what that results in is greater urges and cravings, which you might mistake as a high libido, but it's actually that hypersexuality of the hijacker masked in libido. So if you're distracted in your life and you're constantly feeling that pull back into the screen, porn is doing that to you. When you break the shackles, you no longer constantly feel distracted. You're able to engage in the present because your brain is rewired and hardwired for calm focus. Okay. And number 10 is you're angry and irritable. And that comes from the dopamine deficit in your life. So what I see in a lot of the clients I work with is OCD types of behaviors. So OCD behaviors are a way to kind of get control over that dopamine deficit and to feel okay about it. And there might be lashing out in terms of being angry with your people, and irritability is high. It's because of the dopamine deficit in your life. And that's what that it feels like it's pushing you back into the screen, but it's actually being created by it, which is the trippy part of a problematic porn habit. Okay, so think about this list of 10. And let me go down it one more time, starting at the top. Number 1 is you can't stop watching porn or masturbating. When you try, you experience withdrawal symptoms and things get weird. That is number 1. And like I said, we don't even need to go to 2 to 10, but let's do it. Number 2 is you want more. There might be tolerance building and escalation, which leads you to greater intensity, greater frequency, consistency, or intensity because your brain has a dopamine dependency and it wants to get back into the screen. Number 3, you lose time. So there might be binges where you spend entirely too much time in the screen in porn and masturbation, or you find yourself going back and forth to it a lot of the time. Number 4, you've lost interest in sex in the real world. Your brain is linked to porn, masturbation, or any other sexual acting out behavior. Yes, those count. And your brain no longer gets the levels of dopamine from your partner or from your sex life in the real world. You also probably struggle with performance ability because porn will create and perpetuate erectile dysfunction. Okay, 5, you're more demanding. You might feel the need to do some of those higher level acts sexually and you've become more sexually demanding, or you're just more demanding in your world because that narcissistic bubble puts you at the epicenter and you see the world as the playground meant for your pleasure and your pleasure alone. And if you get there, that can be a dangerous place to be. I work with a lot of people who are in trouble with the law, people whose relationships are teetering on failure because of this, people whose work is at risk. It can put you into an ugly place when that narcissistic bubble takes over. And that can wax and wane also. You lose attraction. Number 6, you've lost attraction to your partner, and you may actually find more attraction to other people in general. That's the novelty seeking piece. And you may find same-sex attraction because there's a high dopamine link, even if you're consuming porn where you're watching men also. And it confuses a lot of the clients I work with. So you've lost attraction to your partner in the real world, but attraction to people like porn performers or novelty or the same sex increases. Number 7, you're in physical pain just from being in front of the computer or from increases in that dysfunctional brain pattern, and pain goes up because of your brain pattern or just from your physical situation. And you also have more mental anguish in terms of psychological, mental health issues and cognitive thinking issues. Number 8, you're losing money. You're spending too much money on your habit. Number 9, you're distracted Being present, being engaged in your life is difficult. You feel the pull back into the screen for the dopamine at all times. Number 10, you're angry and irritable, and you no longer are having any fun, and you're not that fun to be around, and it might lead to obsessive compulsive behaviors to try to control that dopamine deficit in the world. Okay, so what is your brain hack for the day? Your brain hack is, if any of this resonates with you, this problem is deep and complex. It has depth and breadth, meaning it's deep and wide. Most people cannot solve this by themselves. You need to get into a program. You must leave porn behind for these things to clean up. And if you're involved in other higher level sexual acting out behaviors, they come from porn. So the porn has to be cleaned up, and then likely your brain has to be unwired, rewired, and hardwired back towards that optimal mode. And when you do that, this list of 10 signs will dissipate. It will float away. A program is absolutely necessary. So if you're still stuck in this, if you're new here and this resonates, get into my 90-day complete essential guide program. If you've been here for a while and you've been enjoying the podcast, and there's over 800 videos on YouTube, if you've been enjoying those videos but you're not able to get out of the loop, you need to get into the 90-day program so I can help move you through the comprehensive solution to all of these problems, because you need the techniques, you need the tools, and you need the support. Today's the day. This is a downward spiral. There's no such thing as a horizontal spiral. And I would love for you to recognize these things are showing up in your life, and it's time to pull the plug on this thing. If you're inspired, please go to drtrishleigh.com. I would love to help you out and through and up to your full potential. All right, until next time, control your brain or it'll control you.